Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
I'm Prue. I am currently a critical care flight paramedic living in New Zealand in a beautiful place called Nelson, which is the top of the South Island. I have a history of doing all sorts of outdoor activities, including Ironman and making it to the Ironman World Championships. Tying that all together, I had a process of being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So, yeah, where shall I start?
Let's go back to your childhood and growing up. So did you grow up in Nelson? Did you grow up in New Zealand? Have you always been like active and outdoorsy?
I grew up in New Zealand. I grew up in the South Island in a place called Dunedin. We're actually outside of the main city. We grew up in the country. I had a wonderful childhood with lots of outdoors, going to the beach, swimming, playing lots of sports. I can remember from 2 or 3 years old just being outside all the time. We had next door neighbours where we'd go climbing in trees, and we had an amazing tree house that they built, which even had a fireman's pole as an exit. We had chickens, we had cats and dogs, and the next door neighbours had sheep, and it was that not quite full on country upbringing, but it was an outdoors upbringing. As we got older, we got into camping and kayaking and skiing. Mum and Dad would sort of take us somewhere different most holidays if they could, whether or not, that was within New Zealand or outside. We went on a couple of trips to Australia to visit family and, do outdoors things as well. So I was pretty lucky growing up on reflection. And then once I got into high school, I got more into my sport, although I did a bit of everything. I played water polo for Otago, played hockey, Otago being the region that I lived in. I think you guys might call it a county in England. And yeah, sort of was into swimming and all sorts of, you played netball and tennis and cricket, basketball at some stage. I was into rock climbing and got into a little bit of outdoor rock climbing. Was in, what they call the Duke of Edinburgh. I don't know if you guys have that overseas. So I got into tramping because of Duke of Edinburgh, did PE. So we did, tramping and mountain biking. So I've done a bit of everything really, but always, with quite a focus on the outdoors. I've loved it.
Well, especially when you were sort of growing up, did you want to bring in like the outdoors and sport into your future career? Or, how did that sort of evolve to becoming sort of a critical care flight paramedic and doing like all the badass stuff out of a helicopter?
Yeah, so I never expected to be a paramedic. In fact, at high school, I didn't really even know that paramedics existed. I was on a path to being a doctor, and during high school, I took, 3 sciences in English and maths, statistics, calculus, and then I had the PE as a side interest subject, but it was medicine. I wanted to be a doctor. There's a wonderful story that my mum tells when I was 2.5 at preschool, and somebody fell off, like another child fell off the climbing gym, and they'd hurt their hand or wrist or something, and just a little bit of a scrape and a little bit of blood. And I rushed over to help, and the teacher apparently came up to me and said, what are you going to do when you grow up? Are you going to be a nurse? And I said, no, I'm going to be a doctor. And it was the joke of our family for years and years and years. So it was always what I thought I would do. And I got to first year university and did the first year health science or pre-med year that I think most, universities had. And while I passed everything, I just didn't get the super high grades that you needed to get in. I think in my year it was an A average, like a 89 sort of percent average that you had to get over the 8 papers. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I kind of fell into paramedicine after that. I went sideways, did statistics and accounting at university. I then went into medical management, and I ended up with a health science degree, of all things, without sort of any major or anything, still not sure what I wanted to do. And then I was talking to a friend's father, and they just suggested that, how about you become a volunteer with St. John? It's St. John being the ambulance service. And they suggested, I could go and be a volunteer, and that would give me the hands-on patient aspect. So, yeah, by this stage, I actually wasn't doing a lot of exercise, to be honest. I still had gear and bits and pieces, but I hadn't really done a lot for a wee while, for a few years. And I went and volunteered on the ambulance and just fell in love with it. And then you're back outdoors, you're lifting patients, you're in all sorts of different environments. And so I started on my process to become a paramedic.
And how was that journey?
Yeah, it was wonderful. I just fell on my feet. So I've been very lucky in that sense. To become a paramedic in New Zealand, you have to do a degree. So I started off with the volunteer program and did internal training to become an EMT, or an emergency medical technician, and then crossed that onto the degree program and became a casual worker for St. John, the ambulance service, and did my paramedics degree while doing casual work. A lot of hard work, obviously, working and studying and doing some exercise and training and bits and pieces. Got to the end of that and was starting to get back into exercise. So as part of, I guess, the management of how you see things or what you're doing or being so busy, I found that exercise was my out, it was my break, and really enjoyed going to the gym. So I started off at the gym, and then I moved around a little bit around the country in terms of following my career and finishing off my paramedics internship to become a fully fledged paramedic on the ambulance. And during that, got into, of all things, the RPM classes, so Les Mills biking classes, basically. Loved the biking and became fitter and fitter. And at one stage, I wrote a bucket list of things that I wanted to do. In New Zealand, there is a competition called the Coast to Coast. So it's a multi-sport competition, and you go from one side of the South Island to the other side of the South Island, from the west coast to the east coast. And you do that either over 2 days or over 1 day, depending on how fit you are and which competition you do. And it comprises of biking, running / mountain running / walking / river running, rock hopping. I think from memory, there's about 18 river crossings as you go up a valley, and it's about 900 meters of elevation as well. So you do that, and there's kayaking. So it's a different multi-sport event, and I'd put that on there. So once I got onto the RPM classes at the Les Mills, I was like, I've got a bike. Maybe I should get into that. And while I was at work one day, randomly, one of my work colleagues said, there's a women's triathlon. You should really do it. And I was like, maybe not. I'd done like little triathlons when I was at high school. And I was like, yeah, okay, maybe I could. So I got out my road bike, tried my road bike twice, and went, absolutely not. I can't do that. I'm going to fall off a road bike. And yeah, so that's how I fell into triathlon. I finished my paramedics, and then as sort of part of the stress of all the study and then getting into full-time work, fell back into the outdoors and back into sport and triathlon.
Especially with an Ironman and triathlon, you've got the swimming, you've got the biking and the running. Which would you say was almost like your strongest? And then which was the one which was like, actually, do you know what? I really need to work on this. Or were you pretty balanced across the three?
I'm not balanced, not at all. So the reason that I ended up doing the women's triathlon was because there was three other women in my workplace who were doing it, and they were struggling with the swim. And they're like, oh, people don't do triathlon because they can't swim. But obviously, luckily from my background and from my teenage years, I was a pretty good swimmer playing water polo and, swimming sort of 6 or 8 times a week. So getting back into a wetsuit and getting in, to the lake and swimming for a triathlon, it actually didn't worry me. So swimming is my best out of the 3 disciplines. Biking is my second, and I fell in love with biking, and I still love to get out on my bike for hours at a time. Just I can talk about the peace and tranquility and the mind space. But so swimming's my best. Biking is my new love. And then running, I have never been a runner. I wouldn't call myself a runner. I call myself a plodder. And I just keep going. I'm not fast in any way, shape, or form. But again, it's something you have to do for triathlon. And I guess anybody who does a marathon at the end of an Ironman must be a runner in one shape or form. But yeah, I don't call myself a runner. Having said that, I'm trying at the moment to relearn how to run. That's my focus for this year, is to learn how to run better. So, yeah.
So when you say you're relearning how to run, what does that mean? You're working with a coach to what improve your race? I don't know the words, like style or body movement.
So actually I'm working with a physio. So last year, unfortunately, I rolled my ankle and it didn't heal very well, and we just went on and on and on with it not healing. And eventually I managed to get a proper scan and ultrasounds and found out that I'd actually partially torn or ruptured ligaments on both sides of my ankle. So I've got a lot of instability. But as part of that, I saw a specialist and he said, look, we could fix your ankle, or you can do rehab, which will probably be 6 to 12 months to relearn how to run and slowly rebuild everything from scratch again. So I found myself a very specific run physio that I was lucky to find in Nelson. And she had a look at everything in terms of what I was doing, how I was running. And we talked about my history, how I've always been slow, how I've reached sort of a 6-minute kilometers and never really been able to break through this level where I plod. So we've looked at the way my foot is striking the ground, which muscles I'm using in my posterior chain, if everything is activating right, were my hamstrings strong enough, are my glutes strong enough, is my cadence correct? And I've literally started from scratch again. So we started in the gym and I had to rebuild muscle, rebuild my calf strength. I then had to be able to hop on each foot alone a certain number of times to make sure my ankle was okay. And then when I've started running again, rather than having a cadence slow between 150 to 160 per minute, we're aiming for 180, which means the turnover is a bit faster and my time on each foot and the fourth foot is less. So therefore, apparently my speed's going to be faster, which I'm starting to see a little bit of, although I haven't done a huge lot of running, I will say. But it's definitely starting to work. Like yesterday, it was only like a 2.5 3K run, but in patches, I was able to get up, sort of 4.5 5-minute Ks. So I've broken through that 6-minute K, although I can't do it on the long distance because I didn't quite have the fitness at the moment. That's a different story. I took 6 months off and have just looked after myself and done gym work only. Yeah, relearning to run so that my body will enjoy it, but I can also improve on where I've been.
Oh, I find this absolutely fascinating. I am actually working on my ankle strength at the moment because when I was on the Southwest Coast Path, I rolled my right ankle like really, really badly. I actually thought I'd broken something, and but I was still. I don't even know if this is true, but I think I've read somewhere that as long as you can stand on your foot and take like 4 or 5 steps, then you haven't broken anything, and then you're probably fine. But I've literally said to my PT, I need like ankle strength, and I'm actually off to see a physio as well, just because I feel as though I need like a specialist to look at it to be like, actually, yeah, there is something missing here, or actually, no, if you carry on with the ankle rehab and building up the strength, over the next couple of months, then you will be fine.
Yeah.
How are you finding, like, sort of going back to the beginning, are you finding that it's frustrating, or in a weird way, is it quite enjoyable?
No, it's quite enjoyable. I mean, we haven't talked about my process and my path to, full Ironman and getting to the Ironman World Championships. But actually, life's a journey, and I think we really need to trust ourselves and trust our bodies. And because I've had this injury, I thought, actually, I'm going to seize the moment to use this productively. And I know that there's something not quite right with my running. If I can't break through and I can't really enjoy it, and I'm not managing to turn over and get the speed and get the longer distances, then I need to change something. So I guess you go through a period, you're like, oh, I'm injured, I'm hurt, I'm down, it's sore. But then you can reframe it and have the positive mindset of, I'm going to make the best out of this opportunity. And I think in the long term, I hope in the long term, it's going to be way better having taken the opportunity, taken, the chance. Yeah, I guess it's a little bit frustrating in a way. But again, running's never been my forte. Running's not the thing that I just want to get out and go and do all the time. Even in my Ironman training, it was always the thing that was the drag, was the burden, was the bit that I could go out on my bike for hours and hours and hours and have no issues. But getting myself out the door just to go running, and that only requires a pair of shoes, not even a bike or any extra equipment, was always sort of this mindset of, oh, I'm doing it because I have to, because it's the part of, Ironman and completing a triathlon. So I think taking a positive mindset and being able to retrain for the positive and get the right inputs. So the right specialist who reviewed my MRI results, who then said, these are your two options. So I've chosen to find the right physio to relearn. I think it's wonderful. I think I've been given an opportunity.
Like, in a weird way, I know it sounded odd, my question, like asking about like enjoying it, because for me, even just doing the ankle training, it's almost like, actually, this is not like like almost like the missing piece. Because actually, if you listen to the podcast years ago, you'll hear me talk about like my lazy glutes, my left glute doesn't fire. And like, that's all I went on about. And now like my glutes seem to be like switched on. And now it's like focused like on the ankle. So there's always something. So I think reframing, absolutely, and make the best of it. And actually, wow, this is an incredible opportunity to work with this run physio to rebuild up those muscles, and then to actually hopefully get to the point where you can break through that 6 minute kilometer, get to the point where you enjoy the running as much as you enjoy cycling. And during that, you mentioned, Ironman World Championships. Let's talk more about like your Ironman journey to the World Championships. What was the starting point? When did you start taking it up to the next sort of level and wanting to be more competitive?
If we go back to the women's triathlon, I completed the women's triathlon, but not on my road bike, on a mountain bike of all things, because I couldn't deal with the narrow road bike and the clip-in shoes. But I had a heap of fun with my work colleagues, and one of them was really inspirational. And she, as part of her 50th birthday and having breast cancer, she was on a journey to complete a full Ironman. And the women's triathlon had been one of her little goals and little steps along the way. So the four of us, the three extras and her doing it all together, although it's all individual, it was part of the fun of it, I guess, in terms of supporting each other. And at the end of it, she said to me, look, it's March and there's a half Ironman in December, which I'm aiming for. I think you should do it with me. And I went, absolutely not. No way. There's no way I'm ever going to run a half marathon, let alone 90K on a bike and having done a swim. I was like, no, I'm not going to get on my road bike and bike 90K. Like mountain biking, yeah, maybe the little women's triathlon, which I seem to recall it being like a 250-meter swim, a 20K bike, and a 5K run. So like a small woman's triathlon. And she just wouldn't take no for an answer. And for the next 2-3 months, she'd be like, oh, you should come to this beginners Ironman event. Oh, they're talking about nutrition for the half Ironman. Oh, they're teaching you how to change the tire on a bike. And she just kept on, I think we could get you on your road bike. I think you could do the half Ironman. So eventually, around July, I said to her, okay, your husband is into triathlon and he rides a road bike. Would he teach me how to ride my road bike? And she was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he would. So they got me out on my road bike and managed to build my confidence with road shoes and clip-in shoes, and we started biking, and that's where my love of biking started. I just fell in love with it, and I could go out for hours pretty quickly, although obviously my speed wasn't hugely high, but I was out there doing it. And so I worked towards the half Ironman and picked up my running and learnt, I guess, at that stage how to run, because I'd never been a runner. Even at high school, I was never a runner, even with my sports. Like, you run for basketball, you run for netball, you run for hockey, but I never did anything more than just the little triathlons or running because of a sport versus going out to run. So I got to the half Ironman in the December. That's a Taupo 70.3 Ironman, and I completed it and had so much fun. It was an amazing experience. And I got to the end of it and my friends were all there and it was awesome. And my friend who had dared me to do it, basically, she came in after me and then she's like, right, we're going for a celebratory drink and, coffee and cake. So we went off to do this, and both her and her husband were sitting across the table from me, and they just looked at me and they said, so you're doing the full in March? And I was like, excuse me? That's like 12 weeks away. No. And they were like, no, if you take your time from the half Ironman, you times it by 2 and you add an hour, then that's what your predicted full Ironman time would be. And we did a bit of a calculation and it came back at 15 hours. And they're like, and you've got 17 hours to complete it. So you'd be fine. You'd get in on time. You've got some hours up your sleeve. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do a full Ironman. I have never, ever run a marathon. Never. You won't see that. But needless to say, about 2 weeks later, I was signed up for the full Ironman. So my run into a full Ironman was less than 12 months of training. Never in my wildest dreams ever expecting to fall in love with it and to complete a full Ironman. But it's a journey and it was part of my life and I did love it and the exercise was fantastic. And I completed my first full Ironman in March 2018. And again, that was amazing. I had the most wonderful day. The swim was great. I came out, everybody was so happy. I don't know if you know about the Ironman in Taupo. It's one of the only ones where you have a mass start. So there's over 1,000 athletes in the lake and everybody starts at the same time. And the noise and everybody just cheering, from the side of the lake's amazing. Had a great swim, came out, and all those people are still there. And they're, everybody's cheering you on and there's heaps of people around. And I got out into the tent and got onto my bike and I was like, oh, yep, this is awesome. Whizzed out on my bike and came around for my first 90 kilometers and I had bet my expected time by over 45 minutes. And I didn't realize it at that stage, but I had bet my time so much that my friends and family didn't see me because they weren't expecting me to do my turnaround within the township for, another half an hour. So they were all sitting at a cafe. So I whizzed off, went off, came back, and I ended up beating my predicted bike time by an hour. And I got off and I was in the changing room and I was getting ready to go out for the run. And I said to one of the wonderful volunteers, oh, can you just let me know what the time is? And they were like, oh, and I think it was 3 o'clock, and I think I was expecting to finish at 4. And I remember going, oh, no, you must mean it's, 5 to 4. And they were like, no, it's 5 to 3. And I was like, hang on, what? Because I was just so in the moment, and I was not a professional. I had a watch, but I really was just going by the way that my body felt on the day and how fun I was, how much fun I was having. And I'd bet my time by an hour, and I was ecstatic. And I was like, oh man, I've got off this bike and I've got so much time to complete this run walk that I'm now going to attempt to do, having never done 42 kilometers in any of my training. So I had no idea how that was going to go. And I set off, and sure enough, I completed my first Ironman, and I did it in 13 hours and 58 minutes, and bet 14-hour time, when my predicted time was 15 hours, and was just absolutely amazed at what I could get out of myself, what your mind can do with your body. So I fell into Ironman, I fell into triathlon, but I am so thankful that I did, and to have such a wonderful friend that supported me / challenged me or dared me, however you want to look at it.
Do you know what I really love when you were talking about that is the words that you used were fun, amazing experience, having a wonderful day, falling in love with it, full of sort of excitement. And I think that is so special, because sometimes, and I have a tendency to do this as well, obviously Tough Girl Challenges, is that you can end up focusing on the challenges and why it was so hard and how you overcame that challenge. But then sometimes you've got to remember that there is a flip side to all of these things, which is, the enjoyment, the wonder, the satisfaction, the pushing your body, the physicality, like the mental side of it. And so it's just really great to hear about all of that enjoyment, and that actually you can do hard things and you don't necessarily need to suffer. And that's not taking away from the fact that it is hard. But how did so that's March 2018. You come in under 14 hours, which is brilliant,
Yeah.
just having the best time ever. How did that progress? Did you then become addicted? Was it one every year? Did you ever set the goal out thinking, actually, I think I can get to the World Championships with this? Like, what was that journey like?
Yeah, so I think you kind of have to say, to a point, it's an addiction, but I haven't done one every year since. So the following year, I was doing postgraduate study to become a intensive care paramedic. So that's the next step up. And during that process, I continued to use the exercise to be a bit of an out as a break from either work or study, to get outdoors, to enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, I did some tramping, or did quite a bit of tramping during that time as well, and it played some sports, got back into a hockey team and other bits and pieces, but triathlon was definitely my main one. And interesting that you talk about, the challenge and well, now I can't think what the words were that you used.
Suffering.
The suffering, yeah. So it's interesting that you used the word suffering or the challenge, because I did go back and do a second one the following year, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. I really wanted to do better than that first year. I didn't enjoy the journey quite so much. The training became really sort of, while it was my out for my study and my work, it was a bit of a drag, and I tried to force myself to do a bit more training than I had the previous year, because I thought, I can do more. I should be able to get more out of my body. I probably, had packed on a lot more into my life in terms of everything, because I had gone back to study, because I was back in an internship. I'd moved cities as well. So the people that I trained with were different, or I didn't have as many training buddies, using a different pool, not swimming in the lake. So there's a whole lot of differences that changed. So I went back and did the second Ironman, and it was hard. Not only was it hard, but the weather on the day was worse. We had 4 seasons in one day, and it was just one of those times where it was grit and determination that got me to the finish line. And it's learning as well. I look back and go, oh, wow, like you actually managed to get through that despite everything, despite, your training not having gone as well, even though you were doing more. And I got a new bike, and there was a whole lot of changes that I made to try and really push myself that second year. And I came out with a time that was longer and was quite deflated by it. I completed it, but it was like, oh, okay, what am I going to do? Part of the Ironman competitions around the world, they say that you can get on a legacy program, so you can make it to the World Championships. If you do, I think I'd have to double check, it's 12 full Ironman, and then you get, offered a place at the World Championships. And I came to this point, I was like, oh, right, am I going to go for the World Championships under the legacy program, or am I not? Given the last year in my study and my work and trying to fit training in around shift work, I just don't think I'm going to be able to get lower times than what I did on that first one, interesting time. And so I was like, right, maybe by the time I'm 50 or 60, I might have done enough to get into the legacy program. We'll put that sort of on my bucket list of goals list for the future, and I'll just tick away every few years to do an Ironman, and we'll see how it goes. So fast forward on, obviously the next year comes around. I didn't put an entry in for 2020. I was like, oh no, COVID came. Luckily it got cancelled. We went through the lockdown period. I was still active. I was still training and biking at this stage. And I decided, I moved to the South Island, back to the South Islands when I moved to Nelson. And I decided that actually, rather than focusing on Ironman, I'm going to go back to that original goal that I had of doing the coast to coast. So my focus then changed to, oh no, I don't know how to kayak. You have to kayak 70 Ks for the coast to coast in a multi-sport boat. So not a whitewater boat, but a really narrow, long, my boat's 5.5 meters long, tippy, unbalanced, down a river, a grade 2 plus rapids. So, there's a little bit of white water and rocks that you have to get out of the way of. And so I had a whole new skill to learn, but it was outdoors. So I got into doing multisport, kind of the same thing as Ironman. It was a goal, but it wasn't a goal. It was something that I had friends that were doing who kind of pulled me into it, but fell in love with it, and it was a challenge. And because it was new like the first time I did Ironman. It was like, what can I do? What can I learn? How can I get more information and go on this process? So I got fit again post-COVID and had the entry in 2021 for Coast to Coast. And one of my friends said, how about you just do the Ironman in 2021? Because it's 3.5 weeks after Coast to Coast. You'll have the fitness. You're great at swimming, so you wouldn't need to do any training for that because you've got kayaking, which is the upper body strength for your swimming. The biking is in both, and the running is kind of in both. So as long as your biking is a little bit longer for Ironman, like you throw in a couple of long bike rides for Ironman, you could probably do both. And I was like, oh, that's a big challenge. Yep. Okay, we'll take it on. So I did the Coast to Coast, had an amazing time, wonderful time. We were lucky that it was running with COVID still being around, and there was talk of them cancelling it because our levels in New Zealand changed, but they managed to run it, which was wonderful. However, in the interim, in those 3 weeks, the Ironman was cancelled because the COVID restrictions came back in. So I had this entry for Ironman, but it wasn't going to be then. This is where my journey changes, because that's when my symptoms started for my to come MS diagnosis. MS, multiple sclerosis. I woke one day with what I thought was sciatica on my right leg. And I assumed at the time it was because I'd been doing so much biking. I'd trained and just done the coast to coast, and I could spend hours on my triathlon bike bent over, and it was probably my back from that. Over the next 4 to 5 days, the symptoms sort of increased a little bit, changed. I lost sensation in my leg, so I could scratch myself and I didn't really feel it. Like, I knew that there was some pressure on my leg, but it wasn't a sore scratch. And weirdly, I could stick my leg in the shower in the hot water and not feel that it was water. I knew that there was something happening on my leg, and I, kind of could feel the water, but I couldn't feel the temperature. So that's where my journey to my diagnosis started. We went to the hospital. I had scans, got referred to neurology, had an MRI done, and eventually about 10 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks post when my first symptoms started, I ended up with a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, and my world turned on its head. So, yeah.
I know that you're not a doctor, but just what is MS? What has it been, and getting that diagnosis so quickly? What's the impact been for you?
So MS, multiple sclerosis, it's a disorder of the central nervous system, including your brain, your spinal cord, and the optic nerve. So that's the nerve that goes to your eyes. And what happens is it's an autoimmune disease, and your own immune system damages a myelin sheath. So that's in your nerve cells. It's a protective coating around the nerve cell that allows the information to go from one cell to the next cell. Basically, you end up with these inflammation spots and damaged spots either in your brain or your spinal cord, which is where your body has eaten those cells, eaten itself, and you get inflammation and basically like scar tissue, similar to, if you cut your skin, it sort of creates this white spot, and it prevents the nerve signal getting through or significantly slows it down. In my case, mostly it slows it down, and you can't repair myelin at the moment. So once the damage is done, it appears to be done. There is some healing that happens, or you hear of people talking about neuroplasticity. So that's when your body and the nerve system can kind of find other ways for the information to get through. But yeah, it's permanent, lifelong, can't get rid of it. I don't know what the statistics are like internationally, but in New Zealand, there's believed to be about 4.5, maybe coming up 5,000 people with MS out of 5 million, to give you an example. And so for me, yeah, it was the sensation in my leg that had gone. Also of note is that 80 to 90% of people who have MS have quite severe fatigue. The exact reason why isn't fully understood, whether or not it's because your nervous system's having to work so hard, or because of inflammation, or just the way that the body's working. They're not 100% sure. But yeah, there's multiple different symptoms and people get different. I'm just trying to see multiple symptoms that may come and go while others may last for long. Symptoms may include pain, fatigue, bowel and bladder issues, spasticity of your muscles, speech and swallowing issues, thinking and memory issues, and visual disturbance. So visual disturbance comes from the optic nerve that I said before. Spasticity obviously is stiffness and involuntary muscle spasms, and that's due to that connection of that nerve being broken to that muscle, and so it's not quite sure what to do. And pain can come from either directly from the nerves and nerve pain, or it can be from the cause, from the other causes, from the muscles not working properly. So yeah, everybody's different. Everybody experiences symptoms different. And in the bigger picture of MS at the moment, I'm very lucky that my symptoms were quite minor and not prolonged. So I've had a wonderful medical team and have managed to get on a wonderful medication, and mostly my symptoms are gone now. I discuss with my neurologist whether or not my fatigue is MS or it's just because I'm so busy and doing things. And she reminded me back at my last appointment that I'm now getting older, and if I want to continue doing endurance sport and working full time and doing night shifts and having a family, that of course you're going to have fatigue regardless of whether or not you had MS or not. So I just like to take it as it is. Sometimes I'm tired and sometimes I'm not.
How old are you now?
I'm 34.
You're 34. How are you, I suppose, to be honest, balancing all of that? And I suppose, oh God, it's what do I want to even ask? Like, is there a silver lining? Is there like has it made you reflect on your life a little bit differently? Like, are you remaining positive? Are you still, sort of being like, actually, I've still got a bucket list. I've still got things that I want to achieve in my life. I'm gonna just get on and do it to the best of my ability. Like, was there, like almost like I suppose like the 5 stages of grief? Is that something that you had to go through? And have you talked to anyone like and had like therapy or something just to like help you sort of process it?
Yeah. So if we go back to my diagnosis, I thought that everything would be over. I had people tell me, "Oh, it's okay if you're in a wheelchair in 4 years' time. You'll find your way." Or lots of people like, "Oh, my friend's sister, my friend's mother, my friend's grandmother, they've had it, and they're okay. They're still alive, but like they just can't do things. They can't drive, or they're in wheelchairs." And I was like, "Oh no, like really, am I going to end up like this?" And I took the attitude pretty early on that I was going to do everything I could to keep living. I've had some amazing experiences. I've done Ironman. I've been to Outward Bound. I've done quite a bit of international travel. And I was like, no, this is not going to define me. I'm going to keep moving. Obviously, you have to go through grief. And it's not until you've been through a process and you look back that you realize everything that you've been through and all the ups and downs. And even now, 3.5, 4 years on, it's still a process, and you still look at it and go, wow. But I was lucky. I was lucky because I had been so active. I loved the sport. I had been doing coast to coast. Was training for Ironman. I kept moving. I kept exercising. I sought out the appropriate people that I could ask to see what I was allowed to do and what I wasn't. We just made safety plans. So when I wanted to bike, I biked indoor on a trainer when somebody else was at home. So if there was any issues, that they could come and help me. I was able to swim because the water temperature for MS is even. For me, it helped regulate my internal temperature. So the neural symptoms in my leg that I was getting didn't change because temperature can change your nerve systems. I kept going out for walks, and I didn't run because I didn't want to trip over and hurt myself, but I kept moving. I did aqua jogging and aqua fitness classes of all things. But luckily I had a couple of friends who were pregnant, so they loved the aqua fitness classes too. So we just made it, like a friend's outing, and then would go for coffee. And I kept exercising. And when I had my first review with a neurologist, the neurologist looked at me and goes, "Wow, whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Because I'd gone from having this leg that I couldn't feel and that wasn't working very well. Well, it was working fine. I didn't lose, I was, again, lucky I didn't lose any motor control, but it had sensory issues, to being able to feel a fly land back on my leg again. I was able to run again. I was able to basically say, yeah, I know that I've had MS and, I've got a lesion and I've had this change in my leg, but actually I'm fine. So the exercise, looking after myself, going through a grief process, nutrition was really big back then, and trying to de-stress and looking after myself and slowing down a little bit. While I didn't really want to at the time, again, it was an absolute positive for me. I did allow myself to grieve. I have talked to a psychologist, but I think that's really healthy. I think we need to do all of that because you don't know what you don't know, and you can only make yourself better by finding out, to be able to keep moving and healing and grieving and going through the whole process. So if I continue on my journey and explain, I still had an entry to an Ironman, and that's because COVID had cancelled the Ironman, and then I'd got my MS symptoms, got my MS diagnosis, and I still hadn't used an Ironman entry. So people thought I was nuts. People thought I was crazy going for an Ironman. And I actually, again, changed the outlook on it. I was like, right, I'm going to go back and just have some fun. I'm going to go and do this for everybody who can't do it. I want to give hope to people. I want to show that even if I don't finish it, I'm still out there doing it. You know, exercise is great for MS, but it's, you know, good for so many different people that have challenges in their life. And really, like, having talked about, you know, the change from my first Ironman being really fun to my next one being a real challenge and not a great experience because I was so hard on myself, my thought process for the third one changed to, I'm just going to go out there, give it my best shot, have a positive mindset, have a smile on my face, and show the world that anything's possible. And for me, I don't worry about whether or not I was going to get over the finish line or not. I was just out there to prove that I could still get out there and do things, that I trained, that I, you know, could exercise, that I was still moving. And so the way that it ended up working in New Zealand with that Ironman entry, they rolled into a Ironman in December. So where they normally had the half Ironman, they decided to put a full Ironman. So in December 2022, I went back to go and do my third Ironman, my first with MS. And I told my story to quite a few people, and Ironman New Zealand had me on the Women in Tri breakfast panel to, you know, talk about my experiences. And it was the little tidbits and tricks from the first two that I was able to share, and the fact that the mindset and the positivity and the psychology that goes on, and the fact that, you know, anything is possible was all part of the big picture. So don't forget, you know, that there's always more in you and that you can move on. So I went out there and I had an amazing day, very long day, my longest day on an Ironman. I was out there 16 hours and 40 something minutes from memory. But I came across that finish line and I wore my butterfly wings, which is a symbol of MS, had a massive smile on my face, and did it for all my MS brothers and sisters. And it was just this incredible experience again. And I was like, this is what it's about. This is why I do the sport. This is, you know, the process of getting to the competition is for me. The competition is for everybody else. So I had another friend who was competing in that Ironman, and she had been trying to get to the World Championships. And she'd tried, I think that was her fourth year of trying, and she came fourth in our age group that year. So the following morning, on the Sunday morning, I decided, right, I'm going to go down to the roll down ceremony and celebrate her because I'm sure she's going to get into the World Championships. This is going to be amazing. I went down there, got my coffee, went in, and my friend got through to the World Championships, and they still had a couple of spots in our age group. Because it had been in December and there was another Ironman, full Ironman in the March coming, people got to choose which one they wanted to have their rollover entry into. So the field was quite small, but they still had the same number of entries to the World Championships. And it just kept rolling through our group. And then there was a whole lot of people that hadn't turned up to the roll down ceremony, and they had this entry, and it kept rolling down and it kept rolling down. And I was going, man, I must have been like the last 2, 3 in our age group. Surely not. I'm surely not going to get to go to the World Championships from a roll down ceremony. Like, I was thinking, you know, 3 years ago that I was going to need to go through the legacy program and do 12 falls before I'd even get surely not. No, universe, really? Is this going to happen? And sure enough, I got my position to the World Championships through the roll down ceremony. It gives me shivers now. I'm almost in tears and have the massive smile on my face. But my partner was in tears. My dad was in tears. I was in tears. And I was like, wow, thank you, universe. This is amazing. I get to still exercise. I'm here. I've been through a journey with my MS, and I'm going to the World Championships, and I'm going to prove that somebody with MS can go to the World Championships. So I took the opportunity. I couldn't not.
What was it like being out in Kona? Talk us through your experience over there. What was some of the highlights, some of the magical moments?
I just loved the entire experience. I felt so blessed to be there. Again, I was doing it for everybody else. The journey for me to get there to the World Championships was actually quite a road. Was um, quite up and down for the year. I injured my ankle. I was dealing with quite a lot of fatigue, and work was really busy. We had a change in our roster. There was a month where I was pretty much working day on, day off, day on, day off, day on. So like big hours, trying to fit in training with it all. So it was a massive year. But getting to Kona was amazing. So once I was at Kona, I got brought into an athlete ambassador panel, and I was on a panel discussion with a whole lot of special ladies who all had different challenges. There was a lady who had Parkinson's. There was a lady with epilepsy. There was a lady who had been doing the Ironman competitions for 30 or 40 years, a lady who had dealt with PTSD and a sort of undiagnosed, what they thought might have been MS, but was like a functional neurological disorder / something else going on that they weren't 100% sure, but she wasn't meant to be walking. And it was an amazing group of women. So I was really blessed to do that. And then you go through the process and you just feel special because, the check-in process, they call your name out and they celebrate that you're at the World Championships. And when you're racking your bike, you get photos taken and there's people all standing around cheering you on. And it's just really, really lovely. And the actual competition day was beautiful. In the morning, the sunrise and just the sea and all the people and the vibe, that energy, you can only know it if you've been in it. It's like this big hum also almost of energy that you just feel. And it was really special. And again, because I knew that I wasn't there in elite competition, I wasn't at the top of my field, I had gone out with this mindset, I'm doing it for everybody else and I'm going to really enjoy the day. So the swim was magnificent. I saw these amazing fish. There was little dolphins. There was turtles. I did get stung by a jellyfish, but that happens in the sea apparently. But it was beautiful. Came out of the water, was feeling really happy. Had my shower, got on my bike, and there was just so many people around. It was amazing. There was 2,000 women all out on their bikes. So the first 20, 30 kilometers, there was just people everywhere, and you're not allowed to draft, but you just felt like you were in these big groups and everybody was so happy. And, if somebody came past, you just said, congratulations or, go well or whatever. And so you were just talking to each other. It was amazing. And then the bike ride obviously is quite hard in Kona. The weather over there is incredibly warm and you get headwinds on quite a bit of the bike course. They've got a very long, constant uphill section right in the middle. And then when you're on your way back into town, for me, by the time I got to that stage, you're going through the lava fields, which soak up the sun. And my understanding is on the day that it was about 38 or 40 degrees into a headwind and just, like completely at that stage mindset. I knew that if I got to the end of the bike ride that I would walk, run or crawl to finish the Ironman. I just had to make it to the end of the bike in the cutoff times given the heat. Every stop along the way, I stopped to get ice, but all the people were just so lovely and they just wanted to help. And it was, again, just a great experience. Got to the end of the bike ride. That was awesome and was like, yes, I've done this in the time frame. I've come in. Yes, it's taking me all day, but I've got until midnight. I can do this. And so we went off on the run and of all things ended up sort of picking people up along the way. By that stage of the day, people were sort of hitting their walls, hadn't eaten. Some people had been sick, just getting down on themselves, maybe haven't had the competition type day that they wanted. And so I ended up over the course of the marathon running or walking with 6 or 7 different people who just needed a friendly voice. Come on, we'll get you to the next place and you need to try and eat this. Or have you tried, I know that you didn't use it in your training, but have you tried the flat coat because it will give you some sugar, it will, give you some caffeine, and it might make you feel a little bit better. Don't have any solid food, just little tidbits and that sort of stuff. And I just really enjoyed the camaraderie and the woman being together and a competition of being at the Worlds and, being able to do it with MS and being able to complete it. So, yeah, obviously you go through your ups and downs and it's dark out on the road, and I watched the sunset, which was absolutely beautiful. And I actually took a moment. I stood on the road and looked at the sunset going down, and I can still see it right now. It was lovely. It was just a special moment, and then continued on into the dark on the road, and then you come back into town and everybody's there and the music's pumping, and then I saw my sister and I saw my dad and I saw my partner, and I came running down the line and I just grabbed my partner and gave him a big kiss. And I remember the lady going, standing beside him going, "Oh, you are so lucky." And then I ran over the finish line and I was exhausted. I was so tired. But somehow I managed to do this amazing victory dance, and there's a video of it. And it was just so fun. And the volunteers were there and they danced back at me and I danced at them. And then you get your towel and they help you to the finish line. And it's almost bringing tears to my eyes talking about it. But it's just so special. It was just something else. It was amazing. And I didn't prove just to myself, but I proved to everybody else that there's still hope. You go through the turmoil, the ups and downs, diagnoses, all sorts of twists and turns in life, but you can always make something out of it, and you can always continue on and find hope and find a goal and keep going. And it was amazing. It was an incredibly special day.
And you've actually got the video where here she is, swim, bike, run, dance. Prue Young is an Ironman World Champion finisher, and that is on your Instagram, so people can go and watch it. It's at ms_adventure_heli_medic. Triathlete, critical care, flight paramedic, multiple sclerosis warrior, New Zealand rep Ironman World Championship 2023. You will have to pin that video, so it always sort of remains at the top. Massive congratulations, incredible achievement. What an amazing journey that you have been on and continue to be on. And I'd love for you to share your words of advice, your words of wisdom for other women out there who, maybe going through a tough time. Maybe they've had their own diagnosis, or they're struggling through their Ironman training or their ultra training, but they want to, persevere. Apart from just do it, what advice would you like? What advice would you like to share?
I would really love to share that mindset has a huge, huge influence on your life in every aspect of your life. Finding the right thing that gets you into a positive mindset and a positive attitude will just take you places. It doesn't mean that you have to be at your best every day. Please don't hear me saying that. I have my bad days, and we all have our bad days. If you're not having bad days, then there's actually probably something wrong. But it's the good days and the positivity to grasp the moments, to keep moving forward, to find the hope that we all have in us. Find the way to activate that. Don't forget that there's always more in you. Even in your worst times, there is always more in you. Anything is possible. We just have to find a way, find the hope, grasp onto something small. If it's getting through 1 hour, get through 1 hour. If it's getting through one day, get through one day. If something's not working, ask questions. Just keep moving, keep looking, keep trying, keep being positive.
Absolutely. Prue, thank you so much for your mindset, for your positivity, for you moving forward, for you inspiring so many people around the world. It's absolutely inspiring to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hey tribe, how you're doing? I feel as I'm going to get emotional because this is the last episode of 2024. I honestly don't know where the year has gone. Like, are your years getting quicker? Are the weeks and the months and the days just flying by? I honestly feel that way. Time is just disappearing. But I can't remember if I mentioned this during the episode or not. So me and Prue, we did actually meet in New Zealand, which was amazing, in a random cabin one day on the Tiara Trail in the Richmond Ranges. Destroyer was there as well. Destroyer lives in Australia. She's probably listening to this episode because I know she's been listening to all the badass hikers on the podcast and being inspired about what her next adventure or challenge is going to be. But I just wanted to give you a little mini update. So I get sent a lot of books, which is amazing, like a lot of adventurous books of women doing these incredible challenges. But because I've been traveling so much over the past sort of 18 months, and normally when I come home, I spend all of my time editing podcasts or editing vlogs for, to preload content. So I rarely have a chance to read. And it's probably been like that for 2, 3, maybe a little bit longer. And so the pile of books have just been growing. But I've been making a real concerted effort over the past couple of months while I've been at home, while I've been back in the UK, to start reading again. And I picked up this book, which I've had for a while. It's called Take a Hike by Grace Bovis. The book is signed by Grace. So Grace, thank you so much for sending it through to me. I did do a post on Instagram back in 2022 when you sent me the book. And I was just in the bath, having an Epsom salt bath because I'd had a heavy day lifting weights. My muscles were feeling a little bit sore. And I was reading the book until I'm just going to read this little bit out loud. Where are we up to? Okay. One rare Thursday evening, off from serving burgers, I decided I needed a break from the norm. So I dragged my friend Hannah out to East London to a talk night. The advert had popped up in my inbox. It hadn't given much away. Something about a talk by a female adventurer called Sarah Williams. Yes, that's me. 5 minutes into the talk, I was on the edge of my seat, hanging off every word. The subject was her recent adventure running the Marathon des Sables. It was a race I'd never even heard of. I wasn't even aware people ran races longer than a marathon. But here was this completely normal looking woman, not much older than me, talking about the time she ran 156 miles across the Sahara Desert. I was in awe and lapped up every detail, the training, the kit, the stories. It was such an epic feat of mental and physical endurance. How could you possibly be the same person after completing something like that? This was the spark. Wasn't that just the most incredible thing you've ever heard? I said, bouncing out onto the busy London street. There's a little bit more, but I'm going to cut to the next section. I listened to a podcast Sarah had produced where she interviewed other female adventurers about their amazing acts of bravery and athleticism. I was hooked. Soon the courageous voices of these women became the soundtrack to my days and nights. With each interview, I imagined myself there, embarking on the same adventure. I noticed that my lack of self-confidence didn't follow me into the world of imaginary mountain climbing and source-to-sea canoeing trips. It became crystal clear to me. I had to have an adventure. A real one. Oh! So as you can imagine, I knew that I was mentioned in the back of the book in the acknowledgements because it's acknowledged Sarah Williams, creator of the Tough Girl podcast, and all the women of the Tough Girl Facebook group, the Tough Girl Tribe. So I knew about that, but obviously I hadn't read that before. So I was a little bit shocked, a little bit embarrassed, a little bit pleased. But also sometimes I think I can forget the impact that the podcast can have, or the words, when I do talks. It's sometimes all it takes is for one person for it to ignite a spark, for somebody just to hear a phrase, a word, to hear a story, to hear an adventure, and for it to ignite something in them. And that is honestly what I hope with the podcast for you listening. So whether you listen to the podcast about adventurers who are climbing mountains, rowing oceans, running, cycling, whatever their adventure or challenge, it's not necessarily about doing the same adventure or challenge as them. It's about learning from them, their tips and tricks, their advice, applying that to your life. How can you make it work for you? And the adventure and challenge has to be specific for you. It's got to motivate and drive you so that when it is cold and miserable outside, that you want to get up, you want to go training, you figure out ways to overcome those obstacles and challenges. So Thank you so much, Grace, for including me in your book. I'm thoroughly enjoying reading it. It's called Take a Hike. Yeah, it's just amazing to read that, because sometimes I also need a little boost, because I'm working away in my room, editing podcasts and editing vlogs. And sometimes when you don't have a lot of like human interactions after a while, you sort of forget that there are actually people listening to this now. You're going about your everyday life, whether you're commuting, you're running, you're outdoors, you're at home, you're pottering, you're in the garden, you're doing whatever, but there is a connection. And sometimes I do forget about that, that there are actually, not that I forget, there's real people listening, but it does make a difference. So it's given me a real boost and such a great way to end the year. But I would love to know what your plans are for 2025. Have you got any adventures or challenges planned? Can I interview any women who've inspired you? Please do let me know. Send me an email, sarah@toughgirlchallenges.com. I always love hearing from you. I'm also active on Instagram @toughgirlchallenges. The vlogs from the North Island have gone live now. We're having a little break over this Christmas, in between Christmas and New Year, but the South Island vlogs will start up again on the 1st or 2nd of January. So if you haven't visited the Tough Girl YouTube channel, please do go and give it a visit. Hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out. So we have Tough Girl podcast episodes going live on a Tuesday. We have the vlogs going live on a Wednesday, Friday and Sunday, and occasional bonus episodes of the Tough Girl podcast going live on a Thursday. Thank you again for listening. If you'd like to support the work that I do, then please do go and visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. You can become a monthly patron, or you can become an annual patron. If you'd like to make a one-off donation, you can do that via Patreon or PayPal. It's on the website at toughgirlchallenges.com. But if I can help you in any way, please don't hesitate in reaching out. It's always amazing to hear from you. And all that's left for me to say, I'll try that again. All that's left for me to say, actually, no, I need to wish you all an incredible new year. I will be releasing a solo reflections episode on the 2nd of January as well, where I'll share more about what's gone on over the past 6 months. I'll be talking more about the Southwest Coast Path, my tooth issues, my ankle issues. No, there'll be some more fun stuff, I'm sure, that I'll be talking about in the episode. But yeah, that'll go live on the 2nd of January. But all that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all. Give it 110%. Get after it. Go for it. Believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.